My second article that I'm going to talk about is knowing your learning target. This one is talking about shared learning targets and how, again, if you can make those kids know what their learning target is and have a stake in what it is they're learning, it'll help make them progress a little bit faster. So they call these shared learning targets because, and they give the example, if you want to go somewhere and you plug it in your GPS, the GPS has to ultimately know where your goal is, where you are going to get there, and then along there, they talk about how it's going to take you. So it shows you that path. So the learning targets convey to students the destination for the lesson, where it is you have to go, what it is you have to know, and how is it that you're going to be able to demonstrate what it is that you did. So what they equate this to is that students have been flying blind. Even though the teachers have this clear project in mind, they've never really expressed to the students what it is that they need to do and where it is that they need to go. So they say to set your sights on learning instead of letting those students fly blind. Unless all students use, recognize, and understand the learning target from the very beginning of the lesson, the teacher will always be the only one that's providing direction. And so if you can tell them where it is that you have to go, maybe they have a different way of getting there that's more adapt for their learning style. So they say that students that don't know where it is that they're going spend a lot of time trying to figure out less important tasks, like how is it that I'm supposed to show my learning, when is it that I'm supposed to show my learning, how am I supposed to get to there. And many students get exhausted by that process trying to figure out what it is that the teacher wants from them. So if they're on board from the front of this is what you're going to learn and this is how you're going to show me you learned it, then it lets them have a little bit of extra time or a little bit of extra effort gets to put into actually learning the concept instead of learning out how to get there. Your learning targets need to have a lesson-sized amount of learning. So describe exactly how well we expect them to learn and when we're going to demonstrate that. Instructional objectives are about instruction derived from content standards written in teacher language. So again, we need to change that teacher language into student language. In my other article, I talked about turning those into I can statements, saying so that students know when it is they've actually reached that objective. But if they say I can, identify all parts of the cell, then they know that they've gotten that objective done. If they say they can't, they still need to work on it. So they have a clear progression of when it is that they have achieved that standard. They also give you a clue as to look at 3 things from the student's point of view to see if that is accomplished. Number 1 is what will I be able to do when I finish the lesson. Number 2 is what idea, topic, or subject is important for me to learn and understand so I can do this. And number 3, how will I show that I can do this and how well will I have to do it? So those are all questions that you should ask from the student's point of view when you're talking about each and every learning standard. One of the first things that they had to do was share their learning with everybody else. So one of the schools that decided to do this, they basically said that any teacher could do however it is that they want. So some simply paraphrased their instructional objectives, some just wrote the targets on the board, and some told the students what they were going to learn at the beginning of the lesson. And then even those small changes with everybody changing along it really changed the scope of their school. So what they started seeing was that shared learning targets were expressed in other meaningful ways. Students became capable of doing what they were supposed to do because they had a clear picture of what they wanted to do, or what the teachers wanted them to achieve and how it was that they were going to get there. So just by reading that little spot, I know that Melville's kind of gone through a couple of different changes, at least our high school has, on how we were going to implement some of the different things that our administration has wanted us to do. And one of the new things with PLC is everybody's putting essential questions on the board, everybody's putting the learning targets on the board, and there's been the conversations of, well, why am I putting them on the board? What is that going to do? And even just by reading this little snippet of this article, it seems like, well, then you're just bringing your attention to it. You're bringing the students' attention to it. You're reminding yourself of what the actual target is for the day, and you're making that lesson come full circle. So I might want to share this with some of my other colleagues at the high school. The biggest thing that they said they've noticed in this when they've shared their learning targets is that the students are now responsible for their learning and they're full-fledged partners in their learning because they know exactly where they have to go. One of the things that they suggest for the learning targets to be completely shared is that there also has to be a strong performance of understanding, so that the experience embodies the learning target. Explains to each of the students how they're part of the lesson and how they will hit that target. So teachers explain what the student needs to learn in that day and how they're going to connect to that learning target. And if the student performs all the actions, then they will better understand the material. So the tasks lead the student to how they can accomplish their learning target or their learning goal for that day. The second one that they had kind of also said was explaining a criteria for success. It's not necessarily the grades that the student should earn or the number of problems they get right, but it should be the product at the very end. So it's all those I can statements coming together that the student should be able to represent various levels of their proficiency throughout the lesson. And the last one is with sharing your learning targets and empowering the students, because again, with those I can statements, it turns it into something that the students know that they are able to do and can perform for that. So the students now become full learning partners in the education arena, and if they know where they're going, they can also be more motivated to get to that end in mind.